It's safe to say that Sega has had a very rocky history over the last few decades. I remember when Sonic Boom Rise of Lair came out on the Wii U and almost killed the Sonic brand again. It's honestly a miracle that Sega as a company is still around after all of this time. However, things have changed significantly for Sega as a company and brand since the beginning of the 2020s. It all started with the release of the Sonic movie in 2020, which ended up being very well received as a video game adaptation and caused a massive influx of game adaptations today. This all eventually led to Sonic Frontiers being a very good soft reboot for the Sonic series, and a really good first attempt at an open-world Sonic game. Sonic Frontiers and the Sonic movies as a whole gave Sega the confidence to greenlight many revivals of their legacy franchises. Not only that, but Sega's hiring more and more in Japan, and they're upholding a much higher quality standard for their games in general. A big part of Sega's resurgence in better game quality may be in part due to the new Sega CEO, Shuji Itsumi, the current Sega president who not only worked on the Dreamcast, PlayStation, and Kingdom Hearts series, but led one of the company's best years in 2024. Some games released during that time in 2024 are Shin Megami Tensei 5, Vengeance, Unicorn Overlord, Persona 3 Reload, Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, Sonic X Shadow Generations, and other titles. They continue to be on a roll even in 2025 with Shinobi, Art of Vengeance, and Sonic Racing Crossroads being fantastic titles in their own right. I honestly highly recommend you pick them up. However, as we enter 2026, I'm very curious about what SEGA's Super Game project exactly is. In April of 2022, it was reported by various outlets that SEGA was working on reboots of Crazy Taxi and Jet Set Radio with various online elements to create a recurring revenue stream. We didn't see these games officially announced until the 2023 Game Awards, where SEGA announced 5 new titles, including Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, Shinobi, Golden Axe, and Streets of Rage. So the thing is, what exactly is the SEGA Super Game project? SEGA has much experience with online gaming, and has continued to push for online gaming even since the 1990s. Before Xbox Live or even PlayStation Plus, SEGA released a service in 1990 called the SEGA Mega Modem, a plugin for the Mega Drive, or Sega Genesis, that cost around 9,800 yen, or around $60 US in today's currency. It connected the console to a service called SEGA MegaNet for 8,000 yen a month that let console players play together. However, there wasn't really many games to let players play together due to the very low internet speed. Eventually, in 1994, SEGA reworked MegaNet into Sega Channel, which had a rotating library of Sega Genesis titles, and gave users access to 50 games a month, as well as cheat codes and game guides and demos of upcoming Sega Genesis games. However, unfortunately, the service had very limited availability and was too expensive, and you could only download one game at a time. It flopped badly, and the Sega Channel only had 250,000 subscribers at its peak, compared to 18 million Sega Genesis sales. In 1996, Sega tried online gaming again with the release of the Sega Saturn service called Sega Netlink, allowing users to browse the internet, access email, and connect online in a few game titles. However, it flopped once again with only 1% of Sega Saturn buyers using it, and it only sold 50k units. With the release of the Sega Dreamcast, not only did it have a built-in modem, but you could download free DLC from a built-in web browser, and it supported online multiplayer in over 80 games, even though most of the online games were in Japan only. Crazy Taxi 2 and Choo Choo Rocket let you upload high scores or custom levels online. However, one of the biggest things Sega did on the Dreamcast in terms of online gaming was the online MMO Phantasy Star Online. Not only was it the first MMO on consoles, but it is seen as one of the best MMOs of its era. Even though the Dreamcast online service cost $21 in the US a month, it was still successful, gathering over 1.5 million players worldwide after the service was released in the US. However, it didn't last long as the service shut down due to the Dreamcast flopping. Looking back on Sega's history with online gaming, it seems that they have been pushing for online games way before anyone else did, or when the gaming landscape could even support it. In many aspects, it seems like the Sega Super Game may be attempting to fully realize what Sega wanted to do with online gaming all those years ago, especially considering the Dreamcast's heavy focus on it. In May of 2021, SEGA revealed during one of their financial presentations that they are working on the creation of a super game that will be released by the end of March of 2026. They believe that this project will earn them over $600 million worth of revenue. They also explained they are make remasters, remakes, and reboots of all of their old franchises. It seems that SEGA's goal is to remake games in these franchises, then reboot them as a new game, and it would be either a single player, multiplayer, or as a games as a service. Currently, SEGA's most prominent live service game is Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, which launched in 2021, and is still going with a decent player base despite the mixed reception. The developer of PSO2 New Genesis is SEGA's Division 3, and they are leading the development of the SEGA Super Game, which will use past SEGA franchises like Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, and more, as online-focused reimaginings of these games. They seem to be a collection of games that interact with one another and aren't just single-player games. They will have elements of the metaverse or as a social game. So what does this exactly all mean? So the rest of this video is going to be a bit of the off-the-cuff, a little bit just of my thoughts on this whole thing, not really recorded or scripted. I think SEGA is a company who has a heavy online focus in all their games. Even their single player games have a heavy online focus. They even used to be called service games before they abbreviated back to SEGA. So they have roots in these 10 projects. The way they describe this and have been describing it for years, it seems like they want to make an interconnected experience where like you can go up with your friends or log in like with like that SEGA account thing they introduced and explore a virtual gaming realm where like a game that is Jet Set Radio inspired or a game that is Crazy Taxi inspired, you can go through like an entrance to that game, kind of like I think like VR chat, because I've played VR chat. And I think that might be what they're going for, where you're in this hub, this huge hub, and there are portals to each of these games, like Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, and you log in with your SEGA account they introduced like at the beginning of the series, and you join that world with your friends and you explore that world. So you could be in this gaming realm and social hub or whatever, and you enter the Jet Set Radio portal and it opens an EXE that loads that world, and you can still use the SEGA account and explore that world with other friends. And each world is its own game and has its own gameplay style. And I think the team that's working on it, they made Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis and the original PSO2, of course. They have a ton of online experience, so they could definitely pull this off. I think from people I've talked to who've played Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, they think it's okay. It actually has really good gameplay, but it lacks a lot of content and the monetization isn't the best. So I think if they make the super game, which is likely a MMO on a bigger scale, which is not just an MMO that has one game, it has multiple games, they're gonna have to make sure the monetization is good. They're gonna have to make sure people keep coming back. And honestly, SEGA's been doing a really good job recently. So I think they could pull this off. It's gonna come down to the execution. But the idea of but personally, the idea of joining a gaming realm in a world where you can enter different areas of the SEGA universe, like I could go with my friends to a Jet Set Radio game or a Crazy Taxi game, or even like maybe something like that Shadow Garden. Sounds really cool, and I don't really think any company is trying to do something on that scale. Most companies would think of like, oh, we want to make a huge gaming world where people can go into multiple games. They've never tried that. That closest thing I can think of to that is not even a game. It's something like the film Ready Player One, where there are a bunch of gaming worlds. No one's trying to do something like that. If anybody is bold enough to do that, pull that off, it's SEGA, because they were known in the 1990s for doing all this like crazy ambitious stuff. And so I like to see them try this again, because it's not just good for video games to do more experimental and new stuff with online gaming. It's good for the industry currently, because I think online gaming is kind of stagnated. Like you see at these gaming announcement shows, there are all a lot of online games that are heavily focused on FPSs, first-person shooters, gachas. There isn't something like this. And if this is what SEGA is going for, then by all means go for it, because this is something new that hasn't really been done before. And if this is indeed what they might be going for, at least what my theory describes, then yeah, it's pretty unique and something pretty revolutionary. So if they pull it off, it could be incredible and would definitely help SEGA stand out from a lot of other developers. But that's just my personal opinion. I really would like to see this game or this theory become true, because it definitely is really sick. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what I do, make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future uploads. I also have a Ko-Fi for donations and a Twitch account for streaming, as well as a Blue Sky and Twitter account if you don't want to miss any of my tweets or shenanigans. Bye!